What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Commander deck tech video, and this time I'm going to do an updated list for my original Dark Souls themed EDH deck. Surprisingly, this was one of the more popular deck techs I've done. I guess because it is a bit unusual doing a themed deck. I don't usually do those. Now, what I mean by themed deck, again, to clarify, it's not about the synergies, it's not about the power level, it's about the individual cards and what they mean, how they line up with the theme. So for Dark Souls, the commander I chose is Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale. Going back to the deck I originally made almost 2 years ago, with the release of Throne of Eldraine, we got what I think is probably the best and still the best commander option for Dark Souls because of the first endgame boss in the series, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. And I think it's even funnier because Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale is the name, Ashvale, and the lead up to the boss arena is just a ton of ash. So it's clear to me by now that there has to be some kind of Dark Souls influence at Wizards of the Coast. Gotta have some Dark Souls players behind the design of this game. And I would say I changed about 20 cards. I took out some cards, and I added some that I think are better representations of the game. So I tightened it up a little bit. But before I get into the deck, first I would like to remind you that most of you who are watching right now are not actually subscribed to the channel. So I would really appreciate it if you took a second to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you so much. So the first creature here is Soul's Attendant. There's also a Soul Warden. I don't think we need to have more than one of these in here. This is our Firekeeper. This is someone we go to level up. We have the Black Knight still in here from the first time around, one of the most intimidating early game enemies ever. We have Daxos Blessed by the Sun. This is a newer edition. Just a reminder, the last time I made this deck, it was before Theros Beyond Death. So I think Daxos makes a better Solaire than something like Elspeth Sun's Champion. Also offers you yet another way to gain some life. We have Cruxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. This is a big one. Yorm the Giant. I mean, that's really what Cruxa is, Yorm the Giant. A boss from Dark Souls 3, and a pretty cool one too. We have Pack Rat to represent the many rats in the game, and it's probably the best rat in Magic the Gathering. And Reassembling Skeleton, also likely the best skeleton, or at least one of the most consistently played skeletons. There are literally reassembling skeletons in Dark Souls, so this is a must-have. We have Sigilled Skank. We don't have a lizard that's a crystal lizard, so Sigilled Skank is still the closest thing to that. This is such an important part of the game. You kill those crystal lizards, you get some Titanite. We have the Silver Knight, of course, because we have the Black Knight. Why not have the Silver Knights from Anor Londo? We have Cadaver Imp. These are the imps that transport you to Anor Londo the first time. We have Crystalline Giant. There are actual crystal giants, and this is another great example of something that we've received in Magic the Gathering that we actually have a direct comparison to in the game. So I was really surprised over the past couple of years just how many good cards we had to throw into a Dark Souls themed commander deck. We have Flameskull from the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. Again, this is what I'm talking about here. I guess it's the emphasis on fantasy with Dungeons and Dragons. That set also gave us some pretty good cards. We actually have some exploding skulls in the Catacombs. We have Master of the Feast, originally in the first deck because this is the best representation for the Asylum demon that we have. Just a very fat demon that doesn't really look like it should be able to fly. And then we have a Ministrant of Obligation, good old human cleric. I love the Afterlife ability for a Souls theme because the creature dies, you get 2 souls. And we have the newer card here, Nadar, Selfless Paladin. I don't think we had anything close to the Man Serpents. Those are the ones from Sen's Fortress. And while this is a Dragon Knight, it's still close enough to being a Man Serpent for me. And each time you attack, you venture into the dungeon. Sen's Fortress is kind of like a dungeon. Also helps that it's a knight too, so you get some synergy there with Sir Gwyn. We have Pirahart Wolf. There is another wolf from Kaldheim that I think is a better representation of Sif, but because we're not playing those colors, we can't include it in this deck, unfortunately. But that boss fight was just so memorable. I mean, it's one of the most recognizable boss fights in the series. We have Seasoned Pyromancer, one of the go-to builds for a lot of players going back to Dark Souls because Pyromancies just offer you a lot more to do. So I at least wanted to have one card in here for Pyromancers. We have Alaborn Cavalier. This is Havel. This is the Havel Knight. I said it last time too, big old bulky knight. I wanted to properly represent most of the memorable knights anyway. And then we have Bryant Stoutarm. there is a giant in Dark Souls 3 that will actually throw spears. So this is kind of, that's what that dude is. Big old giant just throwing stuff. And we have Ebon Death Dracolich. There's a zombie dragon in the painted world of Ariamis. So this newer dragon from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms I think is a perfect representation. And we have Halvar, God of Battle, but not really because of Halvar himself, but more because of Sword of the Realms, which is essentially the Moonlight Greatsword. It's a very powerful weapon if you want to play a sorcerer build because it's not dependent on your strength. It's one of the more recognizable weapons in the game easily. And then we have Luminous Brood Moth. Now this replaces another moth that I had in here before. It's a way better moth. This is the Moonlight Butterfly. So the Moonlight Butterfly is the soul that you use to get the Moonlight Greatsword. Not really everyone's favorite boss fight, I understand, but definitely a card I needed to put in here. And then we have Tree of Perdition to be the Rotted Greatwood. There are also some living trees in Dark Souls 1. We have Ilharg, the Raised Boar. Probably one of the more difficult enemies I've had to deal with in the first Dark Souls game were those armored boars. They're not very common. I think you'll only run into 3 during the entire game, and 2 of them are in the entrance to the Duke's Archives. And then we have Stonehewer Giant, a giant that can help you get your equipment. This isn't Andre, but this is the giant in Anor Londo, one of the different blacksmiths that you can go to upgrade certain weapons that Andre's not able to. And then we have Champion of Stray Souls. This is us. This is our character. Our champion that keeps coming back over and over again. And then we have Grave Titan to be Gravelord Nito. I've said this before in my previous deck. There are a lot of giants, get a lot of giant bosses too. I didn't just want to throw in a bunch of giants this time around though. I wanted to have specific giants in here for specific characters in the game, or specific bosses. And then we have Harvester of Souls. This is the Taurus Demon, the second boss in the game. Really cool flavor because it is a Harvester of Souls. And then we have Massacre Worm. This was not in the original deck, and I regret not putting it in there because this is one of the scariest things about going into that optional area in Dark Souls 3. You do get a massive Massacre Worm. It is literally a Massacre Worm. And then we have Pontiff of Blight to be pretty much Pontiff Sullivan. Easily one of the most difficult bosses to 1v1 in that whole game. And then we have Sun Titan. I just think that there's too much flavor in here to pass up. It was really difficult to cut down the total number of creatures. I think Sun Titan barely made it in because there are quite a few giants in Anor Londo, and I think it's appropriate to have at least one other giant in here to represent those big giants. And then we have White Dragon. I know what some of you might say. I took out Ugin for White Dragon because I think White Dragon is a better representation of Seath the Scaleless. So one of the late game bosses for Dark Souls 1. I think with White Dragon, you even get the same kind of frost breath. It's like a crystal breath that I think just fits the dragon better. So then we have Chancellor of the Annex, one of the more frightening to deal with enemies in the Dark Souls 3 DLC, the Ringed City, are these angels that shoot these arrows at you. And Chancellor of the Annex, I think, is a wonderful card, a wonderful representation, because it's not even so much an angel. It's some twisted or corrupted winged being that probably used to be an angel at some point. And we have Sholdred. I've talked about this before. Sholdred is pretty much Quelaag. And then we have Piru the Volatile. This is the closest thing I think we've received to Kalameet. Kalameet is one of the DLC bosses of the first Dark Souls. There just aren't too many dragons in Magic the Gathering that have the kind of fire breathing that they do, but I think Piru is probably the closest to looking like Kalameet. And then we have Nalstone Gargoyle, because an early game boss is a rooftop battle with those gargoyles. And we have some sorceries in here. We have Bonfire of the Damned, literally just in here because of the bonfire name, but there's also some pretty powerful pyromancies too. Reanimate for that flavor of dying and coming back over and over again to try again. We have Peer into the Abyss. The Abyss is a pretty big part of the first game, especially if you venture into the DLC. You do get a little bit of it in the main game if you take on the Four Kings, but anything having to do with the Abyss I think is super flavorful for Dark Souls. And then we have Ruinous Ultimatum as another board wipe. Obviously, if you've gone into the Ringed City DLC, you get a ton of arrows shot at you if you try to pass that bridge. Instance, we have Blacksmith's Skill, good old Andre there helping to protect a permanent. We have Soul Shatter, kind of resembling when Kalameet is struck out of the sky. And we also have the soul flavor there too. We have Soul's Fire, get a little bit of flavor there with pyromancies in addition to the soul theme. And moving on to our artifacts. We have a few things added in here, but it's mostly the same. We have our Colossus Hammer. We do have some pretty big hammers in the game. We have Dueling Rapier, it's another new card. Rapiers are a lot faster. While they don't do a lot of damage, you are able to swing more often with them. We have Elixir of Immortality, probably one of the best flavor wins for a Dark Souls themed deck. It's basically your Estus Flask. We have Shadow Spear. A lot of the spears in the game are very similar to this. We have Skeleton Key. This is something you can gain early on upon the creation of your character. If you go for a thief build, you will automatically have a key that will allow you to open up doors that you normally wouldn't be able to. We have Soul Ring because there are souls and rings in the game. We have Blackblade Reforged to kind of be the Black Knight Greatsword, one of the more powerful swords that you upgrade with Twinkling Titanite. We have Malefic's Scythe, easily the cooler looking weapons in the game or scythes, even if they're not that good. We have Mimic. This right here is really why I decided to go back and update this deck. Even though Mimics are part of Dungeons & Dragons, they're part of that fantasy theme, there's no doubt this is one of the more memorable things about Dark Souls as a game. There are a lot of traps, there's deception, all making it harder as a game. We have Ring of Valkis to give haste, and we have the Ring of Zathrid to make it so we can pay 2 and regenerate a creature. We have a ton of rings in the game too, which strangely enough we don't have a ton of them in Magic the Gathering. We have Throwing Knife because there are throwing knives in the game, really good projectile weapons. We have Butcher's Cleaver, it's an actual weapon in Dark Souls as well. We have Dark Steel Plate to give our creatures indestructible. We have the Great Sword, not really the best of the strength weapons, but you can't go wrong. We have Treasure Chests for those chests that aren't Mimics, and we have Ember Cleave, good example of a weapon that has Gold Pine Resin applied to it. And we have Tatsumasa the Dragon's Fang, because why not include a katana in here, some kind of dex weapon. The katanas in the game, they don't do a ton of damage, but they do have bleed damage, which is a different kind of damage. And for our enchantments, I have Field of Souls. If you wanted to, you could include the Abyss, but that's a $1,700 card right now. Not very practical to include it in here just for the theme. Now for the lands, there's not really a lot in here that's super on theme. You're going to see some swamps, you're going to see some ruins and different kinds of tombs and stuff, but the ones that I think are the most notable, City of Brass, that right there is Anne Orlando. We have Cavern of Souls, to pretty much be that endgame area where you fight Manus. We have Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, that's where you fight the Abyss Watchers, and then we have Crystal Vein to represent that area you fight Seat the Scaleless. But anyway, that's going to do it for the deck. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. I will have it linked in the description as well, so if you want to go check it out along with my other decks that I've made, feel free to do that. You will have a wonderful day. I will see you next video.